Proverbs 22:29. Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. So it's saying just by being somebody who is skilled at what they do and who puts the effort in to continually improve at what they do, this will put you into places where you can have influence and can have power inherently, because powerful people need people around them who are good at what they do.
Not that you want to be skillful in something just for the popularity and fame of it, but it is that standing idea that having these abilities puts you in view of these people who have great influence. It puts you in a position of recognition that other leaders have, and they see and commend you for what you do and what you have done.
Welcome to the Masculine Spirit Podcast, where we pursue truth and excellence as men under the leadership of Christ. I'm Robert Krause, and I'm joined by Noah Bills. And today's discussion will explore how society creates and enforces social hierarchies and what our response to these systems should be. So we're basically going to be looking at different areas of life, different hierarchies that society has created, or that humans have created in many different ways, and looking at some of the harsh realities that exist within those hierarchies and what our response should be to those systems that we see. So to get started off, I wanted to address the impact of innate qualities that each of us are given at birth, whether it's something that, we've been given by God, or just, nature just happened to turn out that way. We have genetics, which is the, most obvious thing that we cannot change about ourselves as humans. At least not yet. They're working on CRISPR,
CRISPR, gene splicing.
gene
That'll be fun.
splicing. But until gene splicing is made readily available to the general public, we all have to come to terms with our genetic makeup and the disadvantages and advantages that come along with that. People have certain advantages. Some people are more predisposed to be tall, to have more muscle mass. And then on the other side, you have disabilities where people can be predisposed to certain kinds of diseases, whether it's like an intellectual thing or a physical thing. There's so many different ways that genetics can affect us.
Did you know that the color of our skin could determine how people in society treats us?
No way. Hopefully someday it won't.
That day, well, that would be a nice day to occur, but we'll see when that happens. I mean, yeah, there's definitely genetics is obviously a really big one. There's an incredible amount of factors put into our DNA that again affect all the things that you said, affect us, physically, and mentally, make us predisposed to certain diseases later on, or even like inherently from when you're born. And for some of us, it impacts us more than others. Obviously, I can say for myself, to my knowledge, don't have any crazy weird illnesses that prevent me from doing kind of normal everyday things, but that is obviously not the case for everybody. Life ain't fair.
Life ain't fair, and we see that exemplified in other areas as well. You have things like your place of birth. I think it goes without saying that if you're born into a third world country in a family that's below the poverty line, you're going to have a much harder time getting financial success and maybe even having access to certain resources like food that's necessary for human life than somebody who is born in a first world country, born in the US, or, England or something, for example. These are things where it's like you just have to accept the fact that life is not fair, which is a tough pill to swallow. Like, you can't really do anything to affect where you're born, but it's going to have a huge impact on your life. And it's good to understand that, I think.
For sure. I mean, obviously, I think it's really easy for us to just, make the claim life ain't fair, get along, because I would say that between you and me, we've had relatively solid, you know, God-given opportunities and with our family and location and everything versus
Yeah, of
somebody in a
course.
third world developing country who has to deal with so much more. And I think that's ultimately, we have our own individual struggles with A, B, and C. There's different issues you have with a first world country, third world countries, different genetic lotteries you have, status of parents, again, all these things that you have. But in the end, I think all of us as Christians just kind of lay these things down to God, and it's ultimately like we take on these struggles, these trials. These are the things that we push through ourselves through the teachings that Christ has given us, and that helps us, make our own paths through these struggles that were, outside of our command. It's things that are definitely not fair. As much as I can say that I'm in a pretty good position, there's still a lot of things in my life that aren't fair that I've dealt with. These individualized struggles create individualized plans for us. God has something in store for you. And part of that is the trial by fire. It's the test that he lays out to see, if you're really a follower of him, if you trust in him and his process, and if you're going to get through it or not.
And everybody has these certain advantages and disadvantages. So, as a Christian, it's my responsibility to use my advantages to the advantage of other people. If I've been blessed with a family who is financially stable and just has given me the opportunity to get an education and to, better myself in that way, then I should choose a career that will benefit the world in some way that I can give back to the world. Or, if the most simple way that you can envision this is like, oh, somebody has a bunch of money. Well, they should probably use a large portion of their money to give back to the world, help the people that are needy, that kind of thing.
God wants us to be charitable. Maybe your work doesn't serve people directly, but it gets you good money so that you can use that, or it gives you some other form of advantage to go out and spread that to other people. As I think one of the big things that God calls us to do is to use what we have, and to not be greedy, and to try to give as much as we can to those who don't have what we have.
Sure. And the Bible expresses to us that in many ways, even though we have all these differences between us, in many ways we are the same as humans when it comes to our struggles with sin, our status compared to the holiness of God. In these most essential qualities, humans are the same. And Galatians chapter 3:28 says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Which is kind of just expressing what I was talking about. The fact that we all deserve this harsh punishment for the sins that we've committed, the fact that none of us can work hard enough to justify ourselves on our own. This kind of puts everybody on a level playing field spiritually, even though in these worldly things there is inequality.
And it definitely, some of us are definitely be stronger than others, and some of us will have, I would say, more adverse conditions than others. But we're all children of Christ. We are all called to do more and to be more than what our environments and our predispositions allow us to be. We want to be challenged. We want to challenge others. We want to do more than what is expected of us so we can give more to those who have less.
Amen. Another area where we see this inequality at times is with professional competence. So in any given career field, you're going to have people that are very good at what they do. You're going to have people that are, average at what they do, which is most people. And then you're going to have people that are below the standard at what they do, and they usually might not last very long for obvious reasons. But yeah, there's this inequality in that sense. But I think that this kind of inequality is actually one that is justified for the most part because it's simply based on skill. If you are a skilled doctor, you should have more patience. You should be you should be paid more for that than somebody who is not as skilled as you, because you want to, especially in those more like urgent career fields, you want to encourage the best performance out of people. But really in any career field, you want to incentivize people to be the best at their job that they can be.
Sure. I mean, healthcare is obviously very critical to be knowledgeable and skillful at what you do because you are holding other people's lives in your hands in a sense. Maybe not like literally, you're not performing surgeries on every single patient, but you are, giving them your wisdom to allow them to lead better, healthier lives. And that is a really big responsibility. And when it comes to stuff like that, where you have high levels of responsibility, not of yourself, but of other people around you, is definitely imperative to, perform the best that you can. Obviously, not everybody's going to be able to perform at the same level. But there's a certain standard, but we can't expect everybody to be completely perfect. It's more of just, that self-drive and getting yourself to do the best that you can. Not every field, I would say, has this critical level of importance. Like let's say you have some job where you just like, oh, just something of not crazy big importance. There are jobs that make you more or less responsible for more people or not. If you have a job that is not critical to anybody else, that does not greatly impact other people in their lives, what's the big deal if you're not crazy good at it? I don't think that's where your big Christian responsibilities lie if it's not really impacting the lives of others. If it's just some weird kind of niche thing that you're just getting money for, whatever. You have to find the value and importance of making a change in other things. So, like, it's not just about a career in which you try to make these performances.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have balance in life. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, like put all your effort towards your career. But the Bible does say that everything you do, you should do as if you're doing it for God. So even if it's something that seems insignificant and small, you want to try to do it with a certain respect for the quality of the work and do it as if you're doing it unto God.
The quality of your work does really reflect on you for sure. And I think it is, if you want to be recognized as somebody who can perform well, you actually have to perform well to achieve that sort of recognition. And there is value in that besides money, like gets you respect and authority on top of that, which hopefully you can use in a good way. It is important to perform well and to do what you can, lay it out to God, do your best, be honest.
Yeah, and something else that's important to note is that when you start out doing something, if you're starting in a new career or maybe going to school for something, of course, nobody expects you to be the best, most skilled person in that field. There's a process of learning and continual improvement. And you want to be the type of person who embraces that process of learning wholeheartedly because you want to continue to grow in whatever you do. Even even the people that are at the top of their game in these various areas of life, whether it's business, medicine, government, all of these people that you see that are on, they're celebrities, they're on the news all the time. Like most of them are still not satisfied with the progress they've made, and they're still continuing to work harder. I'm not saying that you should not be satisfied with your own progress, because arguably a lot of them have unhealthy mindsets around that, around productivity and that type of thing. But you do want to be the type of person who is always pushing yourself to go to the next level, to improve in whatever ways you can, to find your weaknesses. That's definitely a biblical concept.
Exactly. You want to approach with an open-minded, with like an open mindset. You want to learn more. You understand you don't know everything. They say a wise man doesn't learn anything, but the fool learns every day. put yourself in a position where you're learning. Don't be cocky or arrogant with it. Like there's always something else that you can be doing or learning. But again, you don't want to go out of control. You don't want to just like go crazy just trying to get like every like small thing perfect, but it is just the general mindset of being open-minded, allowing things to come to you, really analyzing like these ideas and techniques that come your way and doing the best that you can to perform.
Sure. And I think specifically as men, we have a lot of societal pressure to perform in these ways, to perform professionally. And that can be viewed as unfair. Sometimes it is unfair, but I think more often than not, when you get yourself into a mindset of thinking, oh wow, why does this person in my field have so much more status than me, have so much more money than me? Why do people respect him so much more? Most of the time, you should take that, you should see the success that that person has achieved and use it as motivation for yourself. Don't don't look at it from this perspective of this is unfair. Well, since he has all this success, now I can't have any success. It's like, no, you can both be great and you can use the inspiration that you get from these people to achieve more for yourself.
I mean, it's like a classic optimism versus pessimistic approach. It is really easy to recognize sometimes that there are people who have done less than you that get more. Skill issue. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes that's how life is. There will always be people who have more, whether or not you believe that is deserved or not. I mean, that's kind of for you to decide, but it is also up to you to become content with it and to move on from it. We are talking about innate qualities here. There are just things that people that will just have that you don't. You could probably point to almost every single person out in the street that has something that you don't. Maybe not every single
Yeah.
person, but there are definitely some people who you could easily tell have less than you. It's in those moments that you recognize that you want to use what is God given to, provide for those who have less. And like I said, it is really easy to recognize the things other people have that you don't, but that's not there for you to turn pessimistic and to be angry and try to belittle that person. You can use it for a source of motivation. I think it is really satisfying to achieve a level through hard work and determination that somebody else you believe achieved it through some other means of luck or whatever, however you want to determine it. Again, it's really just all up to you. And maybe you're just not meant to like reach that level. Sometimes, we're not meant to do every single thing that like we see comes our way. We're not necessarily supposed to be at the top of every hierarchy.
Exactly.
There are places to settle. There are places to see that you just have continuous work and you just put yourself through it and you just try to give your best honest effort for it. And you'll see progress or you'll see things come out of it that you never expected. Sometimes it's pretty nice kind of not being at the top of the hierarchy. There's more responsibility, more expectation, more power to corrupt. I'm a firm believer in absolute power corrupts absolutely. I never want to be on the top of anything if I can help it. I don't believe that's my place at all, personally.
Yeah, and sometimes the place where you're at, even though it's not the top, is exactly where you belong. It's exactly where God wants you. And he will use you in that position to minister to the people around you and to be someone who can encourage others, someone who can lift other people up in that position. You don't need to be the president to make a difference in people's lives. In fact, a lot of people in lower positions than the president are arguably make even more difference in people's lives.
100%.
So, yeah. Yeah.
You can either make small changes to the world or move the world for the small person, those changes matter just as much.
I like that.
And I mean, sometimes you can have the innate benefits that you use. Maybe you do have that luck or that position that allows you just to get into places that other people would have to work a lot harder for. And maybe you're meant to take advantage of that. Maybe you go into these positions and you make a difference there because you're led to it. That can be God given for sure. Not to say that there won't be any struggle there. There should be like kind of a degree of struggle. There should be some adversity, I think, to really like kind of nail it down.
I agree. And I think that a lot of the time when you see people get into positions where it seems like they might not technically deserve the position. A lot of what it comes down to is charisma and being able to kind of woo the manager, or like, just having this kind of aura around you that just attracts
That
people and
charm.
attracts success, plus 20,000 aura. It's a real thing. You can call it aura, you can call it charisma, but that is a real thing, which we will talk about in a couple minutes. But first,
It's coming up.
Proverbs 22:29. Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. Obscure men. I like that term.
Obscure man.
What's an obscure man?
Well, what does obscure mean to you? Because to me, it's actually hard for me to come up with the definition of obscure on the spot. It's one of those words that I like know the connotation of, but it's hard for me to describe the actual definition.
Obscure in this verse is, I think, describing somebody who's not well known, somebody who does not have a lot of influence, and contrasting that with kings, which are obviously very well known and have a lot of power and influence. So it's kind of saying, just by being somebody who is skilled at what they do and who puts the effort in to continually improve at what they do, this will put you into places where you can have influence and can have power, like inherently, because powerful people need people around them who are good at what they do. And so those types of
There's definitely a
people
draw there.
will, yeah, yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
natural thing.
Not that you want to be skillful in something just for the popularity and fame of it, but it is just kind of that standing idea that having these abilities puts you in view of these people who have great influence. Like it puts you in a position of recognition that other leaders have, and they see and commend you for what you do and what you have done, which is nice. It's not something that I would say you want to seek out like solely, but it is good to have that, and it can also put you in a place to do more if that is what you desire and that's what you're called to do.
Sure, yeah, I think this verse can be misread to some people to mean like you should be the best at what you do because then you can get power, then you can
Get
meet
wealth.
famous and influential people and influence the world in that way. But I think really what it is just a piece of wisdom about what does just happen as a natural process. When you're good at something, you attract people that are famous and powerful. And so it's like, if you're somebody who is very good at what they do, you should be aware of that, in the sense that you don't want to become too enamored by that or become arrogant in, you know, with that happening, because it's easy to become arrogant when you have these people around you who are always telling you you're so good at what you're doing, and especially when it's coming from more influential and powerful people. But yeah, it can definitely also be used to your advantage in a way that's not detrimental, but it is something to be wary of.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It definitely puts you in like a social hierarchy. If we're talking about the hierarchies before, not only having the skills to get you noticed, but having the social abilities to navigate these fields and these people of higher positions. If you want to make certain influences or be in certain areas and allow yourself to move between them, you need to be able to navigate yourself socially.
Yes, and we were talking about charisma earlier in the context of somebody getting a job who may not technically deserve that position, but they're able to like be charismatic and to get the position despite that. But that brings us to another hierarchy in society, which is social skills. The ability to have a conversation, the ability to influence people with what you say. You could take that to an extreme where it's like sociopathic, but if we're being realistic, we all, to some degree, try to influence people in what we say. So yeah, it's that charisma and that ability to lead a conversation can be a very powerful thing.
And we can even see the, going back to the whole inherent qualities things, the things that we are innately born with. There will be people that make judgments on you based off how you look, how you act, how you posture yourself, how you speak, the choice of words. I think if you find yourself in places where people are not valuing you because of surface level things, so if we're going to like skin color, gender, stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's very obvious that if you're in a work environment or any sort of community environment where people are not valuing you properly because of those qualities, I would say it's very likely that you're not meant to be there. That is something that is pitted really against you. You're not really gonna get a ton out of it if people are actively vying against you. It's very difficult to grow. I can't say this works for every situation. Um, to an extent, you do have to feel it out yourself, but God, I think, will ultimately always put you in a place where you are valued because that's when you actually have influence and that's when you can actually thrive and grow and do the good things that God wants you to do.
Yeah, and I think with this social area of life that we're talking about, there's different ways that social skills can manifest themselves. Like, for instance, you have the idea of this person that's super charismatic. They're able to just win anybody over. Everybody likes them. They're telling jokes. Like, that's one type of
Zingers
social.
left and right, baby. That's how you want to do it. You got to be the funny guy. You got to be the funniest person in the room, no matter what. I never
Class
step into a
clown over
room.
here.
I never step into a room if I am not the funniest. With that being said, I step into any room I want.
He's pretty funny. He's pretty funny. Some of the jokes probably wouldn't fly on the podcast, so you know, we have to tame him down a little bit when he's on the podcast.
Sure, yeah.
But no, so you have that concept of a super charismatic, outgoing person. But then you can have another type of social skill where it's somebody who is super intellectual and likes to have these very deep conversations that go super deep into a topic, and they're able to access different kinds of information that other people are not, and that's a type of social skill. So it's, yeah, I don't know, it can manifest in a lot of different ways, but I think one of the main takeaways that we can have from this is, like, if you don't meet a certain minimum of social ability, then everybody's going to notice and it will set you back. Unfortunately, like, that's just the world.
It is difficult to get around because obviously some of us are just not as naturally sociable as others. But it definitely, I mean, it is a huge thing. Going back to the innate qualities things, there are some things that we can't control, but there are things that are within our grasp. If you feel like you're not a great conversationalist, then you might want to work on other areas like how you present and articulate yourself. How we articulate ourselves can mean, physically in our choice of words and our posture. You want to have, you know, cleanliness and confidence. You want to be able to look like somebody who, didn't, you don't want to look like somebody who got themselves ready in like under 10 minutes. You want to look like you picked out if we're talking like a professional setting, dress isn't really big, posture is huge, and the whole eye contact, good firm handshake. These are things that you are capable of training yourself to do. Like I said, easier for some people more than others. But the things that are not innate, you want to work on the most for yourself.
Yeah. But in my experience with social anxiety and that kind of thing, I used to be somebody who was very socially anxious. And the main reason for that, looking back at things, is that I was always judging myself and I was always speaking in a way to either try to get something out of somebody or to receive some kind of affirmation from the people that I was around. So I think that one of the most important things you can do to act as an antidote to that is to be authentic in what you say. Don't don't say something if you don't really mean it. It's like the adage that you hear from grandmas all the time. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. I would say if you don't have something that you actually mean to say, don't say anything at all. You know, if it's not
Sure.
coming from an intentional, authentic place in yourself, then don't feel pressure to engage in that conversation or to say something, you know?
If you feel that it has no value and it's not honest nor authentic, then what's the point? You know,
Yeah, I mean, the point the point for me was to try to impress people. The thing is that people are really good at reading social cues, and so when you're
most
that
of us,
type of
yes.
person that is doing that, people can tell, and you're trying to attract people to you, but it will repel people away from you because no one really likes to be around someone who's always inauthentic, really. Like, yeah, people want you to be your authentic self, so
For sure.
be
Or
yourself.
they might just try to use it against you. Like if you're just like somebody who just tags along and does whatever, then people take advantage of that as well.
For sure. So Proverbs 15:1 through 2 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouths of fools pour out folly." Yeah, I mean, Proverbs is really full of little sayings like this, and a lot of them are regarding our speech, regarding what we say, which I think speaks to the magnitude of how important our speech really is.
I mean, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. If you're really trying to make impact with what you have going on in your brain, what you're trying to like say and communicate with people, you want to make sure that you can articulate yourself, that you know what you're talking about, and that you can communicate it in an efficient, effective manner, and that you're just honest with it. Sometimes we don't always know what's going on. It's okay to just kind of throw out ideas based off your own experience as well, but you let that be known. You be like, I'm not 100% sure about this, but based off my knowledge, my expertise, A, B, and C, this is how I think things should go down. Not everything has to be 100% certain, but it should come from a place of authenticity.
And something that's encouraging is that, I thought that I was somebody who was always going to be awkward, who was always going to be socially uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you're still working on that to this day, and I commend you for that.
Well, yes. I mean, that's another thing is that it's an ongoing process. But my point is that it's something that you can improve. Social skills, in my opinion, unless you have some kind of disorder, which I have a lot of compassion for that. Social skills are not an innate quality. They're something that can be trained and improved and grow and expand. It's something that when you put energy towards it and you are able to express yourself authentically, it will improve with time.
For sure. It's a talent you develop. There's always people that, will see you perform these crazy things and be like, "Oh my God, you're so talented," but they didn't see all the years of hard work before for you to like make those changes to like be better at whatever it is. If it is social skills, it is something we definitely always work on and we develop and we learn more from. My social ability will hopefully be better 5, 10, 20 years from now than it is now to
I
some
hope so,
extent.
man. I hope so.
Yeah, it's been really hard hanging out with me lately. I get it. But I mean, it all just takes time. You can't expect things to change overnight. It's all just about the authenticity of the effort and choosing to do that effort every day, every hour, every week, however you need to do it.
I agree. So moving on to the financial landscape of the world. This is something that is clear to everyone, which is finances have a clear impact on how society views you. Richer people are given tons of advantages and tons of benefits that people with less money are not. And it's like, how do we approach that? Should we be the type of people that are trying to hoard money because of all the advantages that it brings? What's the approach we should have to that?
This should not come as a surprise if you know anything about Christianity, but be charitable. If you have money, I highly recommend using it not only for yourself or your immediate family, but for other people. There are definitely lots and lots of foundations and charities that I'm sure you can find one that aligns with your values that you can give money to that can benefit people who suffer from so many different things, whether it be diseases, disabilities, relief funds from natural disasters, all this stuff. Um, Obviously, like these advantages lend you to have a more comfortable life, and that's cool. And I think that's something that you should hold on to. But it's the excess of that that you should really consider and dwell upon to be like, what can I do with this money that can make a good impact on, just whoever.
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is that you don't want the excess money, but you also don't want a lack of money, or debt would be another way to characterize that. Because we have Proverbs chapter 22:7 here, which says, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave of the lender."
Don't be a slave.
Yeah, but you don't want to be a slave to the lender. And since our society today revolves so heavily around money, there's so many different ways you can go in debt. Like I can go in debt buying a air fryer on Amazon right now.
Dude, you can lease like a drink from Jack in the Box. Like pay it off in 4 installments off of like DoorDash. It's crazy.
They're making it available for everything.
Everyone's always gonna try to take your money. And I think that's what makes us, so kind of inherently greedy and want to like have all this money, which again, we live in a society that relies on the use of currency. So obviously it makes sense. We all want money. I want money for security. It is also nice to have money for fun things, and I will have some of that as well. But it is, again, something you have to evaluate for yourself. Like, especially if you are given or born into circumstances that just allow you to have money for, no work or anything thereafter, I think you should heavily consider what God would want you to do with that wealth. Look around at the people around you in your city, in your state, in your country. What can you do with that money to improve the lives of those who don't have those innate things that are born with much less? It's very telling of your character what you do with the gifts that God has given you.
Sure, and I think this verse in Proverbs has a similar quality to the one that we read about being proficient in your work. That one said, "A man who's skillful in his work, he'll stand before kings, not before obscure men." And I talked about how that could possibly be misread. This one talks about how the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is slave of the lender. You can easily misread this to be like, well, if the rich rules over the poor, then I should be rich. And if the borrower is slave of the lender, then I should never borrow anything. I think that this verse is trying to communicate to us a reality of how money works, of how humans work.
Or how commodities work.
Yeah, it's more of like a practical thing. It's not telling us what we should pursue and what we shouldn't pursue. It's giving us a fact of life, and it's like, use your wisdom to apply this to your life. That's how I see it.
Yeah, there's never really been a society where the poor truly rules over the rich. And again, if you find yourself in that position where you are the wealthy, you do have influence and power. If you put yourself into a position of leadership, the best leaders are servants. The best leaders are the ones that perform and do actions for the people that they are leading and that they rule over. The rich are not the ones that should be expecting those who have less than them to perform for them.
I agree. Yeah, even Jesus washed the disciples' feet. That's an amazing image to think about.
I agree.
Yeah, so there's this practical and just stark message that I think this verse is communicating to us, which is the people with the most resources will have power as a result of that. Worldly power, but still power. And the people with fewer resources, especially people who are in debt, will, being in debt is stressful. So you have this like mental disadvantage. Being in debt can make you miss out on certain opportunities in your life because you're so focused on like paying off this debt. So there's that disadvantage. And yeah, I think I think that's something that we have to be cognizant of. And you want to be someone who has their finances together. You don't need to be somebody who is super rich, going on vacations all the time, buying fancy cars. But, I think it's a biblical concept to manage your finances well, to be able to provide for yourself and your loved ones, and, to have some fun as well, but not in excess. And yeah, that's the principle that I would take from this.
You want to be able to give what you can. Even if you're a king, there is a king of kings, and he sacrificed his one and only son for humanity. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, so the king who rules over all the other kings was a servant in a sense.
100% he was.
That is a very convicting concept, I think. Humans, we think as soon as we get a little bit of power, it all goes right to our head. We become arrogant. We think that we are better than people in some way. So what does it show you if the king of the universe, the ruler of
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
universe, sacrificed himself? Something to think about. All right, so we have physical fitness and attractiveness. This is a fun one. This is a fun one to talk about. A little bit of a red pill. I'm not trying to go down the red pill avenue with this channel, but if there is one episode that someone could define as red pill, it would probably be this one.
I mean, yeah. I mean, this is something that combines our own life choices with innate qualities, and also it is really important when facilitating yourself through life that attractiveness has a large impact on your life. At least it can. Have you heard of the? I like to talk about this a lot, like the halo effect. Have you heard of the halo effect?
I don't think so. No.
If I'm remembering this correctly, the halo effect is like this idea that the more attractive you are, the more likely people are going to assume that you have better qualities than not. So if you're attractive,
But yeah,
people will think you're funnier, smarter, more skilled, a better leader, just whatever goes down the list based, purely off of just that level of attraction. Like if that's all they know about you, then they're likely to choose you over somebody else, based off only that. It
sure.
is unfortunate that that is true. I feel like I can say that I fall fault to that as well to some degree, that I'll assume that more attractive people will have better A, B, and C for whatever reason. But it really just kind of is like a judgmental thing. We all make subliminal judgments of other people. The very first thing you tend to judge people on when you first meet them is just how they look physically. Because when you first meet somebody, that's all you know about them is how they look typically. There are some cases where maybe you meet somebody over the phone first or whatever, or, typing on the internet, and those are other things. But you unfortunately will be judged for many, if not all, of your physical characteristics. It's the same thing like if you see someone who's like severely like physically disabled, crippled in a wheelchair, you might have the assumption that they're not mentally all there on top of that because you assume that because they're not physically capable of doing all these other things that they have other issues on top of that or something.
But maybe they're Stephen Hawking. Gotta think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. That is just the facts of life. That is I try to an extent. I don't like to go crazy. I try to make sure that I can present myself in a manner that is, at least like clean and taken care of. That when you look at me, you can tell to some extent I try to take care of my looks because then people will assume, oh, he puts in this work and effort to go to the gym and to keep himself neat and tidy and looking proper. Therefore, he must be better.
I can tell you were trying today because you wore your Spider-Man shirt. Nobody's gonna judge you wearing that.
Oh, they're gonna judge me, but they'll have like cool judgments. They'll be like,
It's a
"Oh, the
status
coolest
symbol.
guy alive." That's what I'm saying. This is my gold chain. This is my diamond encrusted gold chain right here.
It's better
This
than a
means
gold
that I'm
chain.
wealthy. I mean, that is another thing actually. Like if you wear expensive jewelry, people are just going to assume that you're wealthy, but you can have expensive jewelry and be poor because you spent all your money on jewelry.
Yes, yes, and this kind of gets us into the idea of things about your physical appearance that you can control and things that are out of your control. If you just happen to be somebody who was unfortunately born with not very attractive of a face, it's like, well, okay, that's what you have. That's what you've been given. But there are a lot of things that you can control. You can go to the gym. You can get your body in shape. You can find a
Get plastic
style.
surgery.
Okay, I'm not I'm not endorsing that. You can find a style that really works for you and, accentuates the parts of your physique that you like. You can just take care of yourself,
Proper
have,
hygiene. Yeah.
yeah, proper hygiene, groom yourself. And I think that people, it's a lot more noticeable when somebody doesn't take care of the things that they can control. Like, if somebody isn't showering, you're obviously going to smell BO. If somebody always wears like sweatpants, slides, and and like a old hoodie from 10 years ago, that's going to be very noticeable. So I think an element of the red pill is true, where it's like, yes, people will judge you, unfortunately, based on your appearance. When they don't have any other information, a lot of people will use that initial physical appearance as a judgment. But if you can really have your hygiene, your fitness, and your style dialed in, that's going to account for a lot of those things.
Percent, baby. And I mean, in the end, attractiveness is also completely subjective. So I think another big part of it is just confidence. You mentioned style a lot, and I think that's really important. It's the ability to know what looks good for yourself, and then wearing that with pride. Going hard because that's you. Like this, how you present yourself with such great confidence because you have everything dialed in the way you want it. Not to mention also personality has a big factor in attractiveness. Of course, this isn't something that's like the first thing because physical attractiveness is that first judgment, but then how you carry and articulate yourself on top of that, what your personality is in general also affects attractiveness, and that can bring people to you as well. Have them trust you, confide in you more, and have more faith in your abilities on top of it. And those are also things that are within your control.
Definitely. Yeah. And if you're somebody who you feel you're not blessed in the physical realm, let's say, there can be this tendency to be like, well, why should I even care about my physical appearance? Like, people should just judge me for who I am. And to an extent, you're right. Like, what matters is your heart. But with the theme of this episode, being harsh truths of status and success, it's like, why not just give yourself those little advantages? Why not dial in your style and your clothing choices? Why not dial in your fitness? It's these things are within your control, and whether you like it or not, it's part of how the world works. So, yes, I hope that people will judge you just based on your personality. But realistically, there's things you can do to improve that.
For sure. And I mean, I understand the nonconformist approach, but I think that still kind of plays into the stylesque thing. Just have confidence in who you are and who you present yourself to be. That's automatically better than not having confidence. You don't necessarily have to play all the other games if for some reason you're really against that. But that in the end, knowing who you are and being honest with it will still get you farther than not, or being something that you're not.
Yeah, I think everybody's had that friend who maybe is not the most physically attractive, but they're super charismatic, super confident, and you meet up with them.
They're ballers, dude.
They have a girl next to them who's like a 9 out of 10, and you're like, "What? Like, how did this happen? I don't
You always,
understand."
yep,
But the boy's charismatic. He has charisma going on.
exactly. And the woman's a 9 out of 10 because she has a great personality and aspirations, and she's a follower of Christ.
Of course, and a mother of 5.
Yes. She did all those things despite being a mother of five.
Amazing. So brave. All right, First Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 through 20. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body. I think this is just centering us around the fact that God gave us our body. It's a gift, and we should take care of it.
It's a temple.
Your body's a temple. Yeah. Yeah, I think this really mainly applies to the physical fitness side of things. You want to be a healthy person. You want to try to avoid the pitfalls of health that people fall into, whether it's cardiovascular risk, obesity, lack of endurance. That's your body's a temple.
I mean, this goes outside, definitely just like aesthetics. You can glorify God, going to bodybuilding, but I think there's definitely a lot of importance in just the idea of taking care of your own physical wellness because it affects you, mentally, emotionally, and that can impact the other people in your life. It's the idea that you want to be your best self for others on top of just, keeping yourself alive and healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. People that work out are able to stay much more active into their later years. You see a lot of maybe less healthy people getting into their 60s and 70s, and they're struggling to do some pretty basic things, whether it's like lifting a box or bending at the knees, maybe like raising up their arm because they have shoulder problems. So yeah, if you're able to give yourself that advantage of maintaining your mobility, maintaining your strength into your old age, like these are very, very good things that will benefit you, but also the people around you. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Please send us your thoughts, suggestions, and criticisms at masculinespiritpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to continuing this journey together. Have a blessed day.
Finding strength in submission, that's the mission. Breaking chains of tradition, new position. Walking in His vision, divine commission. This is masculine spirit, listen. Started as a boy with a heart full of questions, seeking validation through worldly possessions, learning wrong lessons about masculine expression. Depression hit heavy with painful suggestions that I wasn't worthy, wasn't making impressions, till I found His message and started progressing. Through every blessing and every testing, now I'm addressing the lies I was festering. Stand up, warrior, it's time to rise. Let His light shine through your eyes. Every battle makes you rise. This is where your spirit flies. Yeah, this is where your spirit flies. See, the thing about manhood, it isn't in muscles, though I built them daily through physical struggles, deeper than hustles and temporary puzzles. Spirit was muzzled till Christ came to shuffle my priorities, showing me purpose is foundational, rational, factual, but still inspirational, national, global, yet still congregational, building generational wisdom, that's operational. Finding strength in submission, that's the mission. Breaking chains of tradition, new position. Walking in His vision, divine commission. This is masculine spirit, listen. Biblical principles, giving me clarity. Carrying wisdom through all this disparity. Apparently strength isn't measured in scarcity. Rapid with charity, prayer, sincerity. Finding the warrior spirit inside of me, guided by a light that was hiding inside of me. Pride had to die for this ride to be righteous. See, Christ had to rise for this life to be bright in me. Sometimes we fall, we fall, we fall. Sometimes we crawl, we crawl, we crawl. But through it all, we hear His call, building walls, standing tall, breaking falls, breaking for our brothers. Brothers, we stronger when walking together, whether the weather is stormy or better. We measure our treasure in spiritual leather and never say never to heavenly preference. Learning to lead when we're serving the least of us, freeing the beast while releasing the priest in us, seeking increase while the feeder was keeping us, chained to beliefs that are deeply deceiving us. Stand up, warrior, it's time to shine. Let your light lead down the line. Every brother by design. This is where our spirits climb. This is where our spirits stand as a beacon for the brothers still seeking. Show them strength isn't weakness when you're down on your knees. Every trial that tested me, every mile that pressed in me, built the man God blessed in me. Now I'm walking in destiny.